The National Assembly buzzed with a rare kind of electricity, one that seemed to appear only once in a decade. Whispers rippled down the corridors as journalists crammed into the gallery, pens and cameras at the ready. Across the chamber, opposition benches sharpened their verbal daggers, while ANC loyalists clung desperately to talking points that now felt fragile and hollow. At the heart of this mounting tension sat President Cyril Ramaphosa, a man long known for his calm composure and quiet confidence. Once celebrated as the smiling reformer who had promised to heal South Africa after the chaos of the Zuma years, Ramaphosa had built his image on renewal, transparency, and integrity. He had vowed to rebuild public trust in a government hollowed out by corruption, and for years, countless South Africans had believed in that promise. But on this day, it wasn't the opposition that challenged him, it was one of his own. Entering the chamber with a thick folder clutched in her hand and fire in her voice, ANC member Nomvula Mokonyane commanded instant attention. "Mr. President," she began, her tone steady but cutting, "you stood in this very house and spoke directly to South Africans. You promised them there would be no sacred cows in the fight against corruption. You assured us that institutions would be strengthened, that the guilty would be punished, and that the ANC would lead by example." She paused, letting her words echo through the tense silence. Every MP in the chamber understood the weight of those promises, the same ones that had defined Ramaphosa's presidency, echoed in every speech, interview, and campaign slogan. Then her voice hardened. "But today," she declared, "I am here to expose the greatest falsehood of your administration, not an error, not a misunderstanding, but a deliberate act of deception." The room erupted. Opposition members cheered while ANC MPs shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging uneasy glances. Mokonyane pressed on relentlessly. She presented a detailed chronology of Ramaphosa's repeated pledges to establish an independent anti-corruption agency, one supposedly insulated from political influence. Reading aloud from his speeches in 2018, 2019, and beyond, she reminded the Assembly how he had promised a new era of accountability. But the evidence she revealed painted a different picture. According to Mokonyane, the appointments to the commission had been quietly approved by the ANC's top brass, undermining the president's claims of autonomy. Key prosecutions, she alleged, had been mysteriously delayed. Case files had vanished from the National Prosecuting Authority's desks without explanation. Some of those implicated, people sitting mere meters from her in the chamber, had never been charged, even after whistleblowers came forward. Those whistleblowers, she added, were silenced, bullied, or pushed out of their positions. What had once been hailed as a bold accountability drive, she said, had been watered down through backroom negotiations designed to protect those closest to power. Her anger grew sharper. "South Africans were promised a bulldog," she declared, "but instead, you gave them a toothless lapdog dressed in the clothing of reform." Gasps rippled through the assembly as reporters furiously typed every word. Opposition leaders nodded approvingly, some struggling to hide their satisfaction as Ramaphosa faced a public reckoning from within his own ranks. For the first time in years, his calm demeanor cracked. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for a glass of water. He tried to interject, but Mokonyane's voice cut through the noise with unwavering precision. "You made us believe," she continued, "that corruption would be confronted without fear or favor. But where is the action, Mr. President? Where are the prosecutions? Where are the prison sentences for those who plundered Eskom, Transnet, our municipalities, and even the COVID-19 relief funds?" Her tone softened, but her words struck like blades. "You promised no sacred cows. Yet the herd remains alive, fat, protected, and feeding off the suffering of our people." The president's eyes glistened as he sank beneath the weight of her words. Some MPs whispered that he was moments away from walking out. Others claimed they saw his lips move silently, searching for words that refused to come. The silence between Mokonyane's statements grew heavy, almost judgmental. Then came the moment that many would later call the dagger to his presidency. Waving a letter high above her head, Mokonyane declared that it proved Ramaphosa had personally intervened to delay disciplinary action against a senior ally accused of tender fraud. "Here it is," she proclaimed for the cameras. Proof that the man who promised South Africa a clean start was, in truth, shielding his own. Chaos exploded across the chamber. Opposition MPs shouted resign, while ANC stalwarts sat frozen, unable to respond. The atmosphere shifted as if history itself had tilted. When Ramaphosa finally rose to speak, his voice was frail, far removed from the confident reformer South Africans once admired. "Yes, there have been mistakes," he admitted shakily, "but my purpose has always been," his words were cut off by jeers. "We don't want intentions," one MP shouted. "We want justice." The chamber roared with outrage, drowning out his every attempt to speak. Then, in a moment that stunned the nation, tears rolled down the president's cheeks. No one could tell whether they came from shame, despair, or exhaustion, but the image was unforgettable. A leader once hailed as South Africa's great hope, now visibly broken by the condemnation of his own colleague. As the session adjourned, MPs spilled into the corridors, murmuring in disbelief. Many whispered that this was the end of Ramaphosa's presidency. Mokonyane, they said, had merely voiced aloud what millions of South Africans already believed, that the president's reform promises were hollow, that corruption still pulsed through the ruling party, and that the much-heralded New Dawn had been nothing more than another illusion. Reporters raced to file their stories, pundits prepared their commentary, and opposition leaders began strategizing for the political storm ahead. Outside Parliament, the fallout was immediate. Social media exploded with clips of Mokonyane's fiery speech, hashtags demanding accountability trending within minutes. Civil society leaders praised her courage, hailing her as a truth-teller who had spoken fearlessly to power. Critics, however, accused her of staging the spectacle to advance her own ambitions. But whether viewed as hero or opportunist, few could deny that her words had struck a devastating blow to the president's credibility. For ordinary South Africans watching from their homes, offices, and taxis, the moment landed differently. Some felt vindicated, their long-held suspicions about political protection finally confirmed. Others felt crushed, believing that even the last threads of faith in their government had been severed. Conversations across the country circled back to a single, haunting question: if even the president could not be trusted, who could? Ramaphosa left the chamber humiliated and weakened. His aides scrambled to control the damage, promising statements and clarifications that might ease the public's outrage. But no carefully crafted words could erase the image now burned into the nation's consciousness, a president trembling and in tears before his own parliament. In politics, vulnerability is rarely forgiven, and this display of emotion opened the door for new challenges to rise. The nation was left shaken. The myth of the unbreakable reformer had been shattered, replaced by the image of a man betrayed by his own party and his own promises. Doubt clouded the air like smoke. Was this truly the end of the Ramaphosa era, or just another chapter in South Africa's long history of political turmoil? No one could say for certain. But one truth was clear: the balance of power had shifted, and the president's once unquestioned claim to moral authority had slipped through his fingers, perhaps forever.